Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com. All right, we're back again. I know it's been a couple of weeks, Steve, that we've been off, but that's them's the breaks. That's how we structured this podcast. But, you know, we step away for a couple of weeks and the outrage machine just kicks in. So the majority of our topics today and our discussion is going to be about outrage on the internet and all of that stuff through two particular topics. And we're going to start with Apple and the absolutely unbelievable crush ad that they've since apologized for. So encourage everyone to go watch it. Obviously, Apple had its iPad event the other day, and they're touting their iPad Airs and iPad Pros, and it was the biggest single day for the iPad since its introduction, according to Tim Cook. At least that's what he said in the video. We'll touch on that a bit later. That the iPad's still an iPad if they don't improve the software, regardless of what chips they put in there. But if we talk about this ad for a minute, I did watch the video, and the ad is in the video, and I wasn't upset personally when I saw it, but I did find it to be a very odd ad. Now I kind of got the idea of, you know, this crusher, the crusher was, crushing all of these creative instruments all into an iPad. I could kind of get what that was kind of saying. But perhaps it wasn't the best visual symbolism available from a company that's touting itself as being a supporter of the creative arts through technology, particularly in an environment where technology is now starting to become feared with AI and all that stuff. Obviously, to me, like, it's like the middle ground. Like, yeah, you could have done that a lot better, tone deaf, but the outrage machine that kicked in on the internet afterwards was what really blew my mind, because it's like, but who knows, you know, maybe if I was like a, aspiring artist, who was really, passionate about these things, maybe I might have had the same reaction, but I don't know. Like, I've always kind of had a quizzical kind of approach to some of this stuff. So I even like when we were doing the films and all of that back in the day, there was a part of me that didn't also want to take it that seriously. Don't get ahead of yourself. Don't think you're curing cancer or anything like that, even though art's important for culture and all of that. But a lot of that was sort of flunging around in my mind as this discussion was going. I don't know what you thought, but anyway.
No, I really didn't think that much. It's an advert. It's an advert for Apple. So there would have been a whole bunch of people that sat round a table and looked at that new iPad and tried to work out how they were going to advertise that in the Apple style. Brand, all of that stuff. And the best thing that they could think of was that it was the thinnest iPad ever.
And that's it.
Well, if you're going to go to that expense, if you're going to go to that trouble, if you're going to crush a few musical instruments and some cans of paint, good on you. I can't believe that anyone's outraged. I understand why they might be, but I couldn't even generate enough excitement to be outraged or to be anything other than completely nonplussed.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, there's two addendums to this. Apparently that crushing was done in CGI for the most part, which I thought was interesting. But it was
no instruments were harmed in the making of this ad.
That's right. And but also that it was pointed out that if you were to actually play the clip in reverse, it actually has the desired impact, which then makes you wonder, did the Apple marketing team, were they switched on enough if someone could point something as simple as that out?
Well, that's a really good point. If I was Apple, I'd just play it backwards. It wouldn't make any difference at all, I don't think, because you could start at the end and then you just finish with the final shot to tell us that it's thin. Because I don't know what else there is to say about an iPad. Do you?
Well, that's right. Well, let's just touch on that quickly too. I mean, we've talked about whenever they release new products, and the thing that's kind of struck me watching this video, apart from being really underwhelmed, and it's supposed to be the biggest update since the introduction of the first iPad or something, according to what Tim Cook said in the video. But it's like, guys, you're not providing a reason why you need to get one of these products. And I specifically mean the iPad Air and the iPad Pro, because like we said before we got on, I've been using an iPad mini 6th gen, and it's perfect. It reminds me exactly of what an iPad is, doing iPad things in the Steve Jobs sense of the word. When we first had our iPad 3rd generations way back in the day, it's that type of an iPad. Now I can see why there would be a market for the low end iPad that they've got. That's I think it's $600. The one that's the 10-inch size one, or whatever size it is, because that's the easy one to have on the couch. But after that, what if you're not updating the OS to do more pro things? You can buy the $600 tablet, the $600 iPad, and it's ostensibly going to do 95% of what the iPad Pro is doing. So why are you paying, excessive MacBook Pro prices for an iPad Pro when it's not really doing much more?
Exactly, and I think that what you're touching on here effectively is that the iPad Pro really is the pen and a keyboard, and then it's not so thin. So so they could have just shown us the normal iPad standard one and said the same thing, and said that the Pro's a little bit thicker when you put the pen and the keyboard with it.
That's right. But the sad thing is with all of this, though, is that for years there's been this promise that Apple will actually revamp iPad OS to actually take advantage of the level of hardware that they've generated. So you can't argue from a pure hardware perspective that the iPad Pro is amazing. It's just that the software's just not taking advantage of it at all, and it hasn't actually taken advantage of it in many years. So if they were to come out, so apparently, as the rumor mill seems to suggest, with the latest iPad OS coming up in June at WWDC, that's going to include a lot of generative AI features and a visual revamp and the whole works. If they do manage to deliver something, and they better deliver something at this point, given how many years have gone by without promising this without actually delivering. If they are able to deliver it, then maybe we can come back in a month and say, all right, okay, we can calm down now. They're actually got a roadmap for this device going forward, instead of it just being a super expensive version of a $600 iPad.
I think you're right, and that's what we should be outraged about. The fact is that we've got the iPad Pro, but it's not doing what it should.
I will say, though, that just finally on this, that they did demonstrate an update on live multicam with the iPad Pro, so you can Bluetooth a couple of iPhones, I think, to the iPad, and then you can do live multicam with it in with a new Final Cut app. I think it's called Final Cut Camera. I think it's called. That's fine. Like, I can see how that's taking advantage of the processor and whatnot, but you got to give us some more, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if they build a system that incorporates some of that generative AI, and so you can actually do things straight through the iPad without having to go to a third party, building images, potentially even building a bit of music, or creating various artistic or written sort of work, then I think that would be very interesting. We know that at the heart of it, with the M4, it's certainly got the capacity, so it just seems a waste that we don't have access to that.
Well, keep that powder dry on the purchase button, and just wait and see what happens. All right, and we'll pivot now to another outrage monster that kicked into gear, and I think it was largely because Jerry Seinfeld's been, out doing excessive amounts of press for his Pop-Tart movie, Unfrosted, for Netflix. I again, it's a bit like the Apple one in that I can kind of I haven't really. I've been a bit like. All right, we'll take a step back. Obviously, the Seinfeld TV show came out when I was in high school, and it was huge. It was something that I grew up on. We had the figurative water cooler moments the next day after each episode aired in the schoolyard kind of thing. I'll still watch, episodes back, and it's still as funny as what it was then. Yeah, maybe there's some dated aspects to it now, but it still has that sort of life minutia stuff, still down pat. But I feel like Seinfeld was preserved his comedy was preserved in amber at that time, because since then he's done his shtick, but I just haven't found it as funny. And as the years have gone on, and it's like he hasn't actually progressed. He didn't you could almost see, like, when you see Seinfeld the show, it's purely before the internet, and it's a character of like an 80s 90s type of setup. He could have morphed his comedy to take advantage of things like how social media impacts lives, the internet, the phone, but he might have jokes like that, but like each time I've seen him make jokes, in recent times I just haven't found him funny. And now, okay, he's now like stirring up the pot because he's saying that, comedians can't do their thing now because of the PC woke left culture censoring and cancelling everything. And, I know that, there's possibly like if he says those buzzwords and then automatically it'll blow up online and generate more publicity and views for his movie or whatever. And there's a bit of cynicism in me about that. But I also just think that when you think about it, at least from my perspective, maybe he's just not funny anymore.
Oh, that's a bit harsh, but gets a laugh out of me nonetheless. Look, I think firstly, he's 70, isn't he? He's not young anymore, and you certainly nailed it. Seinfeld is very much a product of the 20th century, mid-80s, mid-90s. And I think actually if you watch the last few seasons of Seinfeld, they were still living 5 years behind what was happening at those times. So, it's a classic comedy. It's a very funny comedy, but it's kind of a one-trick pony sort of comedy. I think the success of Curb Your Enthusiasm afterwards, and for fans of Curb Your Enthusiasm and Seinfeld, you'd know the link. I think that was probably turned out to be a much more modern show, or one that was able to shift with the times, probably because Larry David was writing it and living it at the same time. But yeah, look, it's interesting. Unfrosted. What's Seinfeld's obsession with cereal? I mean, we all know back in Seinfeld how he used to have it, 5 different cereals in his cupboard, and he'd always be munching on it, and it's a real throwback to the middle of the 20th century. So I think his comedy has a place. I think it's very nostalgic comedy these days, and I think he's a very smooth operator, and I think he knows how to push people's buttons so he can get a bit of free publicity.
Yeah, fair enough. I wonder though if that extends to when he makes comments around how there wasn't really funny shows after his, and he's actually he's actually said that, and it's like, the comedy of of shows in the 70s, 80s, and 90s was of a different, it was of its era, as it should be, because that's the product that it was actually born in. So if you look at it through that lens, but to say that there isn't funny currently, it's because, I think that's, a broad sweeping generalization that's probably a bit tone deaf, to be honest.
Do you think he really believes that? I mean, I remember very famously, how he's always managed to attract controversy when he needs sort of, some visibility. And I remember famously when he called Melbourne the arse end of the world, while he was there, and somehow that managed to become controversial. and I think, was it any coincidence that he managed to, say that while he was in the country? It's those sorts of things. I just think he's a very smooth operator. I tend to agree with you. I find him funny when I watch him in the past. Nothing I've seen of him in the last 15 or 20 years really has made me laugh as much as those wonderful episodes in the 90s.
Absolutely. But that goes back as a final point on the cynicism behind what's actually going on here, in terms of stoking publicity. Is this where we've gotten to that if you've got a piece of work you want to get out there, this is what you need to do to get noticed?
Well, it is. And just to quickly just look back at the Apple ad as well, and Unfrosted, it's getting publicity for these films. We both know, and everyone who's listening now knows, there's a film with Jerry Seinfeld, and everyone knows that there's a really thin iPad out. No, it's like, yeah, the message is working.
Yeah, I guess so. But to me, maybe as a final point, and I don't know what you think about this. Okay, it's possible that they deliberately intended this, but then there's also a part of me that thinks, no, they're not clever enough for that.
I agree, but I think that there's a disconnect now. So people can be outraged, but they'll still go and buy the iPad because they like it. And people, can think, well, Jerry, you're full of it. Oh, but I might just check out your movie just to see, if it's any good. And I think that that's what works. And I know it's on Netflix. I've got Netflix, so maybe I'll watch it tonight.
I don't know. Maybe all of this is making me nostalgic for the times when I grew up in, because it was more just. I mean, there was a cynicism then, but it was of a different kind. Let's put it that way.
It was a simpler time, Ben. It was a simpler time.
Absolutely. All right, we might wrap it up there, and maybe I'll maybe try and spec up an iPad and then throw it out the window and not look at it ever again when I see the price come back.
Very good.
Absolutely. All right, so that's it for this week's episode. We'll catch you next time.